4 distinct controversies. On 4 separate occasions, she was discovered, and on 4 separate occasions, a different person assumed the responsibility, taken out of context, a bookkeeping mistake. The framework malfunctioned. I possess zero awareness regarding any deceitful actions. Ilhan Omar has been sidestepping inquiries for a span of 7 years. At every single committee gathering, in every media appearance, with every journalist who manages to trap her in a corridor, it is the identical pattern: constantly evade, shift the accountability elsewhere, depart. Subsequently, Ben Shapiro sat directly opposite her within a congressional committee chamber and uttered something that no individual had ever spoken directly to her face. Not regarding a singular controversy, regarding all of them simultaneously. He stated, "I am not fascinated by your justifications, Congresswoman. I am fascinated by why the justification remains permanently identical. Each instance you are exposed, another person is at fault. Allow me to explain what occurs when an individual ultimately ceases pursuing the justifications and begins questioning why there is always a justification to pursue." And prior to this proceeding concluding, Shapiro would recite a single figure from her personal monetary declarations that caused the entire chamber to erupt in genuine laughter. Omar did not chuckle. The proceeding took place in Longworth 1310, the House Oversight Subcommittee on Pandemic Relief Fraud, concentrating on Minnesota. Shapiro was summoned as an authoritative testifier. Omar attended because the panel required her presence. She arrived alongside 3 attorneys. Shapiro arrived with nothing except his vocal cords. Within this chamber, merely one of those assets carried weight. He did not present himself, did not express gratitude to the presiding officer, did not deliver an introductory monologue regarding his credentials. He stared straight at Ilhan Omar and began speaking. "Congresswoman Omar, March of 2019, you presented at a CARE donor event. You characterized the September 11th strikes by stating, and I am quoting verbatim, CARE was established following 9/11 because they acknowledged that certain individuals committed an action. Those are your exact terms accurately?" Omar tilted toward her audio device. "That statement has been purposefully extracted out of its original context. I have spoken on this matter on numerous instances, and I assume," Shapiro interrupted her, courteous, rapid, resembling shutting a portal prior to an individual concluding their passage through it. "Congresswoman, I will reach the context shortly. Are those your terms? I require a positive or negative." "Affirmative. However, gratitude. February 2019, you posted online regarding the reason lawmakers back Israel. You wrote, 'It is strictly concerning the Benjamins, baby.' Your terms, accurately, I have expressed regret for. Are those your terms? Affirmative. That identical month, you stated before lawmakers, I desire to converse regarding the political sway within this nation that dictates it is acceptable for individuals to advocate for loyalty to an external nation. Your terms? Affirmative. And the complete background of that, 3 statements, 3 verifications. Gratitude, Congresswoman, under 60 seconds, 3 statements verified. Omar never concluded a lone phrase. Such is the velocity of Ben Shapiro. If you have witnessed him previously, you recognize that was his courteous demeanor. If you have not witnessed him previously, comprehend this. He speaks more rapidly than the majority of individuals contemplate. And he was merely initiating. Here is what transpired next. Shapiro ceased speaking to Omar. He pivoted to the panel and he stated something that altered the complete framework of the hearing. "Presiding officer, I did not arrive here to re-adjudicate 3 ancient statements. Congress already balloted on them. The representative was ousted from the Foreign Affairs Committee. That chapter is closed." I observed Omar's shoulders ease marginally. She assumed the difficult segment had concluded. She assumed this would manifest as another hearing where an individual recites her previous posts. She claims she already expressed regret and everybody proceeds. She was incorrect. However, I desire this panel to observe a pattern. 3 statements. 3 instances the representative was confronted. 3 instances she gave a variation of the identical reaction out of context. I lacked understanding of the historical background of my phrasing. You are misrepresenting my statements. He paused. 3 separate declarations, 3 separate years, and every lone instance the fault belongs to the individual who heard it, never to the individual who uttered it. Another pause. This one deliberate. I would request the committee to remember that because we are preparing to watch it occur anew with $250 million. That represented the exact moment the trap was constructed. Not activated, constructed. Shapiro was informing the chamber, and every individual viewing from their residence, I will demonstrate a pattern. And every time Omar opens her mouth from this point forward, she will either shatter the pattern or prove it. There is no third option. Omar perceived it. She has participated in politics long enough to recognize a setup. Therefore, she grasped for the shield she always grasps for. Mr. Shapiro, you sit here reciting posts from 2019 that I have already addressed, already apologized for, and that Congress has already acted on. I am the initial black, Muslim immigrant woman elected to Congress. I endure more threats against my life than almost any member of this body. Over 14,000 credible threats last year alone. I have been physically attacked at my own town hall, and you want to consume this committee's time reading outdated social media posts? She is proficient at this. Authentically proficient. Within 3 sentences, she transitioned from being the person questioned to being the person victimized. She has executed this for 7 years, and it has worked flawlessly every single time. Reporters back off. Committee chairs change the subject, the shield goes up, and the questions stop. Shapiro did not raise his voice, did not argue about the shield, did not take the bait. He performed an action that almost nobody executes when Omar deploys that card. He agreed with the part that was true and walked directly past the part that was a deflection. Representative, I believe you. I believe you received death threats. I believe the attack at your town hall was real and serious. That is not in question. What is in question is $250 million in federal money that was stolen from a program designed to feed hungry children in your district, governed by a law that you personally wrote. And if the chairman allows, I would like to discuss that now. That details why Shapiro operates differently from every other individual who has ever questioned Ilhan Omar. Everyone else fights the shield. They argue about whether she is truly a victim. They argue about whether the tweets were really anti-Semitic. They argue about the shield while Omar walks out the back door. Shapiro avoided touching the shield. He walked past it and proceeded directly toward the money. And money ignores your identity. Money leaves a trail. Money possesses receipts. If you arrived here to observe Ben Shapiro dismantle Ilhan Omar, you merely observed the primary wall collapse. However, that functioned as the warm-up. Subscribe and share this right now, because what Shapiro stated next regarding $250 million stolen from a children's meal program represents the reason she did not want to be in that room. And it represents the moment she stopped saying out of context and started saying, I have no knowledge. Shapiro shifted gears. His voice dropped, yet the speed remained identical. Representative, in March 2020, you introduced the Meals Act. That law permitted food distributors outside of school systems to receive federal reimbursements from child nutrition programs without the standard inspection and verification process. You remember introducing that law? Omar straightened her posture. The Meals Act ensured that low-income children who depended on free school lunches could still eat when schools shut down during COVID. I am proud of that legislation, and I stand by it. You should be proud of the intention. Now, let me tell you about the result, and here is what you need to understand about what happened next. For the past 5 minutes, Shapiro had been running fast, cutting Omar off mid-sentence, machine gun pace. Now he slowed down, not because he was tired, but because the numbers he was about to say needed room to land. When Ben Shapiro slows down, the weight is about to get heavy. A nonprofit titled Feeding Our Future utilized your law to register dozens of fake meal sites across Minnesota. These sites claimed they were feeding thousands of children every single day. They were not feeding anyone. The food did not exist. The children did not exist. The meal sites were shell companies featuring fake addresses and fake invoices. $250 million in federal money. Money that was supposed to buy meals for hungry kids was stolen. He let that number breathe. $250 million. Then continued. That money went to luxury cars, to million-dollar real estate, to wire transfers to bank accounts overseas, to vacations that the people running these fake meal sites took while children in Minneapolis went to bed without dinner. He turned to Omar. 65 people have been convicted so far. The woman who ran the entire scheme was sentenced to 42 years in federal prison. 42 years. And the chairwoman of the Minnesota State Fraud Committee said something specific about your law, Representative. She said, she took the guardrails off so that billions of our tax dollars could be stolen. Omar's counsel leaned over and whispered. Omar ignored him. She had her answer ready. I have stated from the beginning that anyone who stole money intended for hungry children should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I have no knowledge of any fraudulent activity connected to any meal program. There it is. I told you to watch for it. In part 1, the defense was out of context. Now, the defense is, I have no knowledge. A different scandal, a different year, the same woman, the same structure. The fault is never hers. She didn't know. She couldn't have known. Somebody else did it, but Shapiro was already 3 steps ahead. He had been waiting for those exact words. You have no knowledge. Okay, let me walk through what you do have, Representative. He counted on his fingers. 1 fact per finger, each one short enough for every listening person to hold on to one. April 2020. You recorded a video for Somali TV Minnesota. You spoke in Somali directly to your community. You personally thanked a restaurant called Safari and told your viewers that Safari was distributing 2,300 meals every day to families and children in need. 1 finger up. That restaurant, Representative, was the single largest fraud site in the entire Feeding Our Future network. The owner was convicted of stealing $16 million. Federal court records show the restaurant was not distributing 2,300 meals per day. It was not distributing 200 meals per day. It was distributing 0 meals. Not 1 child was fed. 2nd finger. You said 2,300 on camera. The court said 0. One of those numbers is true, Representative. And the person who said the other one is sitting in this room. 3rd finger. He didn't wait for a response. Your name appears 6 times in the trial exhibits from the case against the woman who ran the scheme. Emails and communications between your office and multiple defendants. 4th finger. You held your 2018 election night watch party at that same restaurant, the one whose owner was convicted of stealing $16 million from a children's meal program. 5th finger. And when the Minnesota State Fraud Committee invited you to come in and explain your connections to these convicted individuals, you missed the deadline to respond. When they moved to subpoena you for documents, your own party blocked the vote. He held up his open hand. 5 fingers, 5 facts, 5 connections. Representative. A video you recorded, trial exhibits with your name on them, emails from your office, a party at the fraud restaurant, and a subpoena you refused to comply with. You say you have no knowledge, but you have a lot of evidence sitting very close to you. I've watched a lot of hearings. When a witness counts evidence on their fingers, it's usually for show. When Shapiro does it, it's for the people watching at home. 5 facts, 5 fingers. Simple enough for anyone to remember. Simple enough to repeat to the person sitting next to them on the couch, and impossible to explain away one at a time when they are standing together. Omar's voice went tight. I am not charged with any crime. No federal prosecutor has accused me of participating in fraud. What you are doing is insinuation dressed up as questioning. She's right. No prosecutor has charged her. That is a fact. And Shapiro did something that surprised me. He agreed. You're correct. You have not been charged. I am not a prosecutor. I am not charging you with anything. I am here as a witness, and I am asking you a question. He slowed down again. This time his voice changed. Not angry, not sarcastic. Something closer to exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from watching something obvious being ignored by everyone in the room. There are children in Minneapolis who went to bed hungry during the pandemic. Real children, not the fake ones on the invoices. Real kids whose parents lost their jobs, whose schools were closed, whose only guaranteed meal was the one the government promised to provide. $250 million was supposed to reach those children. It did not reach them. It reached car dealerships and real estate offices and wire transfer counters, sending cash to accounts overseas. He looked directly at Omar. You wrote the law that removed the guardrails. You appeared on camera promoting the restaurant at the center of the fraud. Your name is on the trial evidence. The woman now serving 42 years says she believes you knew, and your answer to all of it is 3 words. I have no knowledge. He looked at the committee. In the first 10 minutes of this hearing, the answer was out of context. Now, the answer is, I have no knowledge. A different scandal, a different decade, the same structure. Every time this representative gets caught near something, someone else is to blame. The context was wrong. The language was misunderstood. The system failed. She didn't know. It is never her. Not once in 7 years. That landed in the room like a stone dropped in still water. Not because it was loud, but because it was true. And everyone sitting there had just watched it happen in real time. 2 different scandals, 2 different sets of excuses, the same woman reaching for the same shelf every single time. If you know someone who still thinks Ilhan Omar is just a misunderstood progressive who keeps getting unfairly attacked, send them this video right now. Because what comes next is when Shapiro opened her financial disclosures and the room started laughing. Shapiro's voice changed again. Faster, sharper, like a man who has been building towards something for 20 minutes and can finally see it. Representative, I want to move to your congressional financial disclosures, the ones you personally filed for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025. Omar's counsel spoke immediately. Mr. Chairman, the representative's personal financial disclosures fall outside the stated scope of this hearing on pandemic relief fraud. Shapiro did not wait for the chairman to rule. Mr. Chairman, when this committee is examining financial irregularities connected to the representative's district, her legislation, and her community, her own financial disclosures are directly relevant, especially when those disclosures contain a $29 million discrepancy that she has not explained. The chairman paused for 1 second, then nodded. The witness may continue. Omar looked at her counsel. Her counsel looked at the table. That is the body language of a legal team that knows exactly what is about to happen and cannot do anything to prevent it. Shapiro picked up one piece of paper. The first time all morning he looked at anything written down. He read 3 numbers, one at a time, with silence between each one. Long enough for every person in that room and every person listening at home to hear the number, understand it, and feel it. Year 2023. Your husband, Tim Minette, owns stakes in 2 companies, a venture capital firm called Rose Lake Capital and a California winery called EST Crew. On your 2023 congressional disclosure, you reported their combined value at $51,000. Pause. Year 2024. The same 2 companies, the same husband, a new disclosure filed with Congress. A new combined value, between $6 million and $30 million. Longer pause. April 2026. You amended the 2024 disclosure. You changed the value of both companies to 0. You told the press it was an accounting error. He set the paper down, looking at the committee. $51,000. $30 million. 0. 3 consecutive years, 3 wildly different numbers for the same 2 companies owned by the same man. And the explanation is, our accountant made a mistake. He turned back to Omar. Representative, your constituents in Minneapolis work 2 jobs to pay their rent. They file honest tax returns every April. They report their actual income down to the last dollar because they know the IRS will come after them if they don't. And their representative in Congress filed a disclosure that was off by $29,949,000 and called it a clerical error. Omar started to respond. The original filing was based on incomplete information provided in good faith by my husband's business accountants. The amendment was filed voluntarily as soon as Shapiro was already talking. You filed the amendment 1 year later, after the House Oversight Committee opened an investigation into the discrepancy, after the president publicly questioned the numbers on social media, after reporters began calling your office daily. The original filing sat on the public record for 12 months, showing you were worth up to $30 million, and you only discovered the error when other people started asking questions about it. He wasn't done. But I have one more number, Representative. This one is not from your disclosure. It's from court filings. He looked at his paper one last time. Your husband, Tim Minette, has been a political operative in Washington for nearly 20 years. He ran campaigns. He started a venture capital firm. He started a California winery. According to your 2024 disclosure, his companies were worth up to $30 million. That is what you told Congress. Pause. According to court documents filed in February 2024, a lawsuit involving your husband's own business partner, Rose Lake Capital, had a total bank balance of $4,244. Somebody in the gallery laughed, then another person. Then a low ripple moved through the room. Not because it was funny, because the gap between $30 million and $4,244 is so enormous that the human brain cannot process it as deception. It processes it as comedy. The number is too small. The lie is too big. It breaks the scale. Omar did not laugh. Shapiro let the laughter die on its own. He did not smile. He was not performing. He was reading a court document. The winery, EST Crew, the one your disclosure valued at up to $5 million. Court filings show it had $650 in its account. It stopped paying its winemaker in 2023. It filed to dissolve its business license this year. It is gone. He paused. And your newest disclosure, filed last month. Your husband's total income for all of 2025 from both companies combined, between $200 and $1,000. Your joint net worth after debts, somewhere between negative $80,000 and positive $95,000. He set the paper down, folded his hands, and stopped being an expert witness. He stopped citing numbers and court filings. He started talking like a man who had spent 30 minutes watching someone dodge and had finally run out of patience for it. He looked at Omar, then at the committee, then back at Omar. Representative, you described the murder of 2,977 Americans as, "Some people did something." You blamed the people who heard it. You said support for Israel was all about the Benjamins. You blamed the language. You promoted a restaurant that stole $16 million from a children's meal program. You said you had no knowledge. You filed a disclosure showing $30 million in assets, then erased it overnight. You blamed your accountant, each sentence shorter than the last, each one landing heavier. Every single time you get caught, Representative, someone else is at fault. The listener, the language, the system, the accountant. It is never you. Not once. Not ever in 7 years. He leaned forward. His voice dropped to almost nothing. Quiet enough that the microphone barely picked it up. Quiet enough that every listening person leaned in closer. At some point, this committee has to decide if it is never her fault, if it is always somebody else's mistake. If every answer is, "I didn't know," or "you're taking it out of context," or "my accountant made an error," then when does this committee stop believing her? He sat back. Because I stopped believing her 3 scandals ago. And I think the people watching this stopped long before I did. Omar opened her mouth. Her counsel put a hand on her arm. She closed her mouth, opened it again, then leaned back in her chair and stared at the wall behind the chairman's head. Not at Shapiro, not at the committee. At nothing. For 7 years, I have watched Ilhan Omar walk into hearings, interviews, press conferences, and hallway ambushes with the same set of shields ready. Out of context. Islamophobia. Already addressed. No knowledge. Those shields have worked against every reporter who was afraid of being called a bigot for pressing harder. They have worked against every committee chair who didn't want the headline. They have worked against every Republican colleague who wasted their time attacking the shields instead of walking past them. They did not work in that room. Not because Shapiro hit harder than everyone else. Because he never touched the shields at all. He ignored them completely. He laid every scandal next to every excuse and let the repetition do the work. And when you hear the same defense 4 times in a row for 4 different scandals across 7 years, you stop hearing a defense. You start hearing a tell. If you are still watching, you are here because you already knew. You knew before this hearing started. You knew before Shapiro said a single word. You knew that something was deeply wrong with a woman who calls the murder of 2,977 people something and cannot explain where $30 million went and refuses to answer questions about $250 million stolen from children. Subscribe. Share this with every person in your life who needs to hear it. These are the stories that will never be told on network television. We tell them here. The hearing continued for another 30 minutes. Other witnesses spoke. Procedural questions were asked. None of it mattered. The room had heard everything it needed to hear. Omar left through a side door. No press availability, no hallway statements, no tweets for the first 4 hours after the hearing ended, which, for Ilhan Omar, might be the longest public silence of her entire career. A woman who has never in her life walked past a microphone without stopping to talk into it. Walked past 6 of them without opening her mouth. Shapiro stayed for 5 more minutes. Answered 2 questions from other committee members, shook hands with staff, picked up the 1 piece of paper he had brought into the room. 3 numbers written on it in pen, 50, 1,000, 30 million, 0. He folded it once, put it in his jacket pocket, and was out of the building before Omar's motorcade had left the parking garage. That is also the speed of Ben Shapiro. There exists a foundation of hard-working citizens spread across this nation, like the retirees who dutifully calculate and submit their taxes every April. They perform this civic duty without a hint of cynicism, never pausing to deeply question exactly where their financial contributions are being diverted. They operate on a fundamental trust that their money is being funneled towards something inherently good and vital for the nation's survival. Consider the dedicated public school teachers who have poured 40 exhausting years into overcrowded classrooms, shaping the minds of the next generation, yet never seeing a six-figure salary on their earnings statements. Reflect upon the dignity of military veterans who returned home, bearing scars from brutal overseas conflicts that the American public has long since forgotten. They asked for nothing in return, save for the profound hope that their country would honorably keep the promises made when deploying them into harm's way. Think of the compassionate grandparents subsisting on fixed incomes, who still found it in their hearts to donate spare dollars to local lunch programs. They did this out of the unshakable belief that no child in America should ever have to endure the pangs of hunger while trying to learn. A staggering, incomprehensible sum of $250 million of their meticulously gathered tax money was legally designated to feed those very hungry, vulnerable children residing within Minnesota. Instead of purchasing nutritious meals, that money bought a fleet of high-performance luxury Maserati sports cars. It was diverted to purchase opulent, sprawling waterfront condominium properties that ordinary taxpayers could only dream of visiting. It was funneled into purchasing international plane tickets to far-flung nations deliberately chosen because the United States government possesses no extradition treaties to legally recover those stolen federal funds. The brazen fraudsters orchestrating this colossal criminal enterprise took money legally and morally meant for children's milk and daily sustenance and callously squandered it on extravagant commodities those impoverished children will never even get to see. Thus far, the federal justice system has successfully convicted 65 individuals for their direct participation in this sprawling financial conspiracy. The principal architect, the woman who maliciously masterminded and ran the entire fraudulent operation, is currently locked away, serving a severe 4-2-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. Yet, astoundingly, the specific political figure who authored the legislation that permanently removed critical bureaucratic guardrails and opened the door for this monumental theft insists, with a completely straight face, that she possessed absolutely no knowledge of the resulting catastrophe. The exact same woman who the exact 20 appear on camera actively promoting the restaurant functioning as the central closed doors. The precise woman who officially filed a staggering $30 million personal financial disclosure document, only to miraculously erase it from the public record entirely, casually attributes the massive discrepancy to a simple mistake made by her accountant. Furthermore, this is the identical elected official who previously reduced the catastrophic deaths of 2,977 innocent Americans to a mere 7-word dismissal. Despite all of this, she remains comfortably seated within the halls of Congress, continuously drawing a publicly funded salary ironically paid for by the exact same hard-working taxpayers whose vanished millions she completely refuses to account for. When the decisive moment of accountability finally arrived, Ben Shapiro did not stride into that congressional hearing room clutching a massive, heavily tabbed binder overflowing with legal exhibits. Nor did he rely on a hidden staff of frantic political researchers, whispering prepared talking points directly into a concealed earpiece. Instead, he walked in with remarkable, undeniable speed. He spoke with a rapid, relentless velocity that left the entire room utterly breathless. With surgical precision, he methodically laid out 4 distinct political scandals directly adjacent to the 4 corresponding excuses she had chronically utilized to evade responsibility. In doing so, he weaponized the repetition against her, ultimately asking the one, singular, devastating question that nobody in the political establishment or the media had possessed the courage to ask Ilhan Omar directly to her face in 7 long years of public service. At what exact point do you stop expecting all of us to actually believe you? In the face of that impenetrable logic, she possessed absolutely no answer. For the very first time in a continuous 7-year span of masterful political dodging and aggressive media deflection, Ilhan Omar was left entirely speechless, possessing no answer whatsoever. 4 separate scandals. 4 distinct times she was decisively caught in the act. 4 consecutive times she ensured somebody else entirely absorbed the brunt of the blame. It was always the missing context, the misinterpreted language, the flawed administrative system, or the incompetent accountant. Finally, it took one resolute hearing room to look at the pattern and definitively say, "Stop."